This episode is brought to you by Merge Marketing for all of your needs on print, design, web page design, and security. Go to mergemarketinginc.com.
Hello, welcome to Submerge Life, the podcast where we're asking two questions. How are you submerging into life and listening to the journey that got you there? Before we get started, just want to remind you, go to submergelife.com. We have all the episodes there and all of the links on how you can listen and watch all of the episodes. Also, I have some merch that's on there. If you click the merch button, this is a sample of what's on there. Actually, it's everything that's on there currently. When you purchase something from this list, the proceeds go to a specific organization or person, and to help them submerge into life. Like we have on the bottom, we've got Teach, Love, Inspire. That is benefiting a school in North Africa. And Lo, who is out there teaching. We've got Broke with a Smile, who's benefiting neighborhood church in Central Fresno. And then we have I Once Was, and that is benefiting Loto and all the work that he is doing in the juvenile detention centers. All right. And now let's get on to my guest. Help me welcome Geena. Hello, Geena.
Hello. Hi, Tony.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Now, just to let everybody know who is watching on the video, well, actually, if you're listening to, I'm using a new system. So we're kind of testing it out for the first time. And hopefully everything works out well. So if you hear some clicking, it's just to get things started. All right. I think I'm done with all the clicking. How was your day?
It was good. It was relaxing. How about you?
Good. Little busy trying to learn this program and doing all that kind of stuff. I usually like to keep my Sundays home, but I did have to go out to Walmart and, deal with people.
Yeah.
Yesterday was a really busy day, but so let's just get started. This episode is dealing with suicide. And if you are dealing with suicide, there is a number on the screen, National Suicide Prevention Hotline, which is 1-800-273-8255. If you need to reach out to someone, just call that number. They will connect you. They will help you. So this might be an episode you might not want to listen with the kids. Well, at least the younger kids, older kids, because this started at an early age for you. But before we get into your journey, how are you submerging into life?
So I recently signed up for a writer's workshop. I've been writing in some way, shape, or form since I was 8 years old. And many people throughout my life have always told me, you need to tell your story. And so I am taking a writer's workshop specific to works of nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would like to be able to publish that and then follow that up with a memoir to follow that. And then I also have a children's book series that I'm slowly working on. That's been inspired by kids that I worked with for 6 years. And
nice.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I love that. That's great.
Yeah, the kids I worked with were absolute rock stars with special medical needs. And I think it's important to teach empathy and acceptance around that. So, and then I also am learning more about human trafficking, specifically in the state in which I live in, and just raising awareness by posting about that, I did a donation drive at my work just to help open the eyes that is a real problem, not just outside of the United States, but here as well.
It is, yeah. And one of the biggest times where that is an issue is during the Super Bowl. I don't know if many people know that, but during the Super Bowl, that is a huge problem out wherever the Super Bowl is at. That is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are some awesome things. Well, let's dive into your journey on how you got into here, got to this place, because, you know, I know some of the motivations on why you want to do these things is because of your journey. So go ahead and take it away.
So I first started having experience with like a deep feeling of sadness at the age of 8. My parents decided to get divorced, which ultimately was the best decision they could have done. But it kind of came as a surprise to me, just because they were mindful to, you know, hide their fighting from us kids. And so I had a very hard time adapting to that change and coming to terms with the new dynamics of the family, and having parents in different states, having siblings in different states. And so I started coping with that just by, I turned to food for that comfort. And so it started with just a really deep feeling of sadness at that age.
Yeah.
And progressed at the age of 9. I initially, when my parents split up, I started off with one parent, moved back with another. And after I had made that transition, I came into contact with a person who started sexually abusing me. And that lasted for several months. And with that, my depression turned into a deeper depression, a deeper dive into relying on food for comfort, just not having those coping skills as such a young child. And I didn't feel that it was safe to share what was going on with any adults in my life or anybody I knew, just because there were threats being made as to, you know, if you do tell, you know, harm will come to other people you care about.
Yeah.
So it was a very heavy burden to carry, you know, knowing that if I didn't take that on myself, that someone else I love and care about would be subjected to that same sort of treatment. And I didn't want that to happen. So I became a protector of sorts.
Yeah.
And so it was after the abuse had started that I started having thoughts of not wanting to live, because I felt like that was, if I wasn't around, then I wasn't going to be able to be harmed. And so there were 2 instances during the time of the abuse that, again, not really knowing how to go about taking that action to want to end my life, I ran out into the traffic on 2 different instances. And both times I just recall being very angry that they stopped. They foiled my plan, if you will, which thankfully they did. But at the time, I didn't know how else to deal with that.
And that was at 9?
It started at 9, and it went on for 1.5 to 2 years. I've blocked out a lot of details surrounding different traumas that I have dealt with over the years. So.
Yeah. Was there, besides eating, was there any other things that you did when you became sad, or, you know, at the age of 8, like what did that look like, going through depression?
You know, At that age, it really was, I was trying very hard to stay engaged with my friends and my family and not going into an isolated state of being. That came later.
Yeah.
But I just remember feeling really sad and having a hard time coming to grips with the decision that my parents made. Wasn't until, years down the road that I, came to understand that it was for the best. But I think I just felt blindsided because they had protected us from seeing the bad,
Right.
So that kind of hindered my understanding of that situation.
So when 9 comes around and the abuse started happening, you tried to jump in front of traffic twice to take your life. What stopped you from trying again?
I think because if memory serves, it was towards the end of the abuse that the second time that I attempted that happened. And I think I felt a sense of safety that I didn't maybe need to do that because I was no longer in that constant situation. And I just wanted to be a normal kid.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have this heavy weight on me. And so I just tried my best to not think about it.
Yeah. It's really heavy. I don't even know where to go from there. Man. So life continues to go on, right? The abuse stops. You're living with siblings and one parent at that time?
Yeah.
And
Oh, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I was living with one parent, and then I have 2 younger siblings that I was living with at the time as well.
Okay. The eating, that played a huge role in trying to cope with everything. Describe a little bit more on how your thought process with that.
So I saw it definitely as a comfort. And it ultimately turned into this protective shield, if you will, as I got older. And that I felt if I made myself unappealing to the opposite sex, that they wouldn't want to approach me in that fashion. They wouldn't be have that need or that wanting to do that to me. And I thought it started out just as food comforting the feelings that I was having. But yeah, as I got older, it just turned into a whole nother problem in and of itself.
Yeah, I think that's super important for people to recognize is that, we can be a little McJudgy on people, right? And assume things because of how they look or what they do. And sometimes it's just a byproduct of the coping mechanism or the coping habit.
Right.
Whatever it is, that there are deeper things that there could be deeper things going on. And in your case, there was. I mean, you were using food to make yourself undesirable and because of what was happening. So it stopped around 11.
Yes, the
Okay.
abuse did.
The abuse did. And then going on into high school, did a lot of those the depression continue past
It
into high
did.
school?
Yeah, it just it kind of transitioned I feel like my coping just transitioned and changed throughout the years.
Mm-hmm.
As I found that the way that I maybe was coping wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really didn't want to deal with those feelings or didn't know how, or a combination
Mm-hmm.
of both, really. So
Yeah.
into high school, everybody going into high school definitely wants to be accepted and not, not thought of different from their peers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got really, really good at faking my way through life. Faking that smile.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as school was done or school and work, once I got old enough to work, it was all about isolating myself in my bedroom,
Yeah.
writing, writing out my feelings, and music has always been a big part of my life, and it's been very therapeutic
Yeah.
in so many ways. So,
I didn't mention this earlier, but I know Geena from high school. We went to high school together.
mm-hmm.
We are still 29 though,
Yes,
forever
and
29.
holding.
Yeah, and I look back and I don't. I always seen you as the happy-go-lucky person. I never seen what was behind that curtain.
Mm-hmm. I made
And
real sure of that.
yeah, yeah. Um, so when you left, because you were always happy inside during school, but when you went
Mm-hmm.
home, you would just lock yourself in your room, or what did it
Mm-hmm.
look like when you went home from school and after everybody goes away?
That brought me a great amount of peace, actually, in some ways, because I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I can just sit in here, not have to deal with anything, not have to be around anybody. At one point, I shared a room with my sister, and I would lock her out.
Mm.
I had an older stepsister who, at one time, she knew I was really depressed, and so she wanted in the room, and I wouldn't let her in. So she broke my bedroom window to get in to make sure I was okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was just very cautious about, I just didn't want to be around people. And it was almost, I felt, in looking back, I felt like for my family, if I was in a good mood, that was suspicious because they were so used to me being somber, but never knowing why.
Yeah. So you mentioned music. Music was a huge, kind of therapeutic. Listening to it. What were some of the
Yeah.
artists or songs that kept you focused?
You know, ironically, in looking back at a lot of, because, I'm 29 and holding, mixtapes were a big thing back in the day. So I still have a lot of those. And a lot of the music I listened to was love songs.
Mm.
And I think that stemmed from my wanting to be loved in that way.
Mm.
And it was just, other than that, I can't speak as to why I listened to that. It's not like I had all these boyfriends and stuff growing up as a kid and things like that. I think it spoke to a part of me that I hoped to have one day, a healthy kind of love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that. So
what did life look like after high school? Did you go to college? I don't remember.
I didn't go to college. After high school, I moved out of state and spent a few years kind of bouncing between California and Montana, actually. And before I finally settled on where I was going to live at that time, that was just, there was a lot of escaping, a lot of not dealing with things, and just really not knowing what I wanted to do with my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And after bouncing back and forth a little bit, I ended up back in Montana for many years.
Uh-huh. Did the depression get worse?
It did. As the years went on, it got worse, and I adopted more and more coping mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
After high school, between 18 and 21, I turned very heavily to alcohol, and started abusing that almost on a daily basis, certainly on a weekly basis. I was living in a small town where, there wasn't a whole lot else to do and no one really cared.
Yeah.
That's what the kids were doing. So it was easily accessible. And let's just say I didn't get turned away from drinking with people who were old enough to drink. So, and, I was just trying to do whatever I could to numb everything I hadn't been dealing with over the years. Again, and I'd started counseling. I'd been to a couple of counselors during this time, and that did help to some degree, but I don't think I was fully open to maybe the healthier coping mechanisms at that time, because I wasn't really ready to truly deal with the issues at hand.
Yeah.
So I was still binge eating all the time, eating in secret, putting on weight very rapidly, and drinking a lot of alcohol, still highly functioning as a professional. And at one point I determined that wasn't enough coping mechanisms. So as a way in my mind to have control over the pain, I started cutting on myself all the time. Superficially, for the most part, but just when things got too heavy to carry, which was often, the more I cut.
Yeah.
And then things really got out of control. Like I said, I'd been going through counseling. I had been getting prescribed antidepressants to take, and other medications for different, short-term medical things. And when a week before my 21st birthday, my roommates and I had a party like we always did. And I got really drunk and went to bed and ended up being sexually assaulted by an acquaintance of mine at the party. And that took me back to my younger years, trying to figure out, how did this happen again? What did I do? The things that a lot of people that go through those things start thinking about is, how is this my fault? Because it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't done X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
So, and they immediately, went about bragging to people the next day about that, which again kind of took me back to my younger years, and that, who's going to believe me if I say otherwise? So like I said, I was abusing alcohol. I was cutting. I started attempting overdoses with all the pills that I had been prescribed, because I wasn't taking my antidepressants like I should have been. And instead I was just abusing them when I needed them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's intense. So you tried to kill yourself again?
I did. There were several instances where I'd start off maybe with lower amounts of pills, and then it gradually got higher. The harder it was to cope and the more pain I was in. I just ended up in kind of a tailspin. I was cutting all the time. I was, documenting in my journal all my feelings and the attempts that I had, and anger about not succeeding in those. There was just so many different things that were flying about in my mind all the time, and just still trying very hard to appear and be normal to the naked eye to everybody else.
So obviously, I mean, you're still here.
Yes.
So there was a point where all of, where you had to face it, right? You had to own it and then try and find help. What did that look like? What happened at that moment, or was it a gradual thing?
A few more years passed, actually 7 or so to be exact, because I really struggled with this whole really deep depression and suicidal ideation and attempt journey for a good solid 20 years, until about the age of 28. At which point I found myself sitting in the middle of my living room of my apartment, with a plan in place to take my life. That was the one time I really feel like, I don't think I ever wanted to die. I think I wanted the pain to stop. And I didn't know how to make that happen outside of that. So, but in that moment was my first real, I really don't care if I wake up from this. So something or someone, we'll call it a higher power, perhaps. I reached out to a friend of mine, and I told myself, if she answers the phone, I won't go forward. If she doesn't, then I will. And she answered the phone, and she listened to me. And I just told her, I really don't want to live right now. I don't know what to do. I'm really overwhelmed. And she just was, like I said, she was that listening ear that I needed in that moment. And if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't be here today. So she'll always be a very important person in my life, even if we don't talk now.
Yeah. Did she do anything magical that made you want to stop? And I'm getting to a point, Yeah.
No, and looking back, I don't think she did. I think she was there when I needed someone to be there to keep me from doing something that would have clearly caused great harm to me and to those that care about me.
Yeah. I think sometimes on the receiving end, where somebody comes to us with their problems, we feel like we have to have all the answers, or we've gotta, walk them down somewhere or lock them away or whatever. And it's like, no, sometimes you just need to answer the phone. You just need to be there. That's it. You don't have to say anything. I know that's been true inside my life, where it's like, I didn't really need people to solve my problems. I just wanted you to listen. I just wanted somebody to listen. And sometimes there is where you need to go a little step further and try and find help. But at the very beginning, start just by listening and just being there, answering the phone. That's super important. Just take that step and then go from there and see what happens. But we get scared, and I think we overthink it. I know I do sometimes, because I've worked with a lot of people, or I've listened to a lot of people, go through stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like every time it happens, I feel inadequate in doing anything, but I just got to remember, no, I'm just here to listen. If I can offer something great, I'm going to continue to answer the phone. I'm going to go to their house. There's a buddy who lived out in Visalia, which is an hour away. And there are times where it's like, I knew he was going to be by himself for like the whole weekend, and he was in a good place. So I'm like, I'm just going to drive over there. And I did. Like, I just showed up. He's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, well, I just wanted to show up, see how you're doing. So let's go to dinner. And we went to dinner. It happened a few times.
Yeah.
Man. Okay, so life continues on past 28, and things get a little bit better. You start talking and opening up about what you've gone through and what you are currently going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I at that point I certainly found some really good counseling services that were benefiting me. I also, and this is not for anybody or for everybody, but I stopped taking any kind of antidepressants simply because they seemingly were not working with the chemistry in my brain the way that they should have. They may have been exacerbating the issue, I was told. So, and again, it's all about finding the right treatment for you. And that's a personal choice for me to find other ways to cope other than that. So, really good counseling services, finally realizing that I have more power over my life than what I realized up until that point.
Mm-hmm.
And that I don't have to let the experiences that I go through dictate my future. They don't have to hold me back. I am the only thing that can hold me back. And I've done my fair share of that.
Yeah.
So just, and, there were points when I definitely had to lean into my faith through this. God and I have always had a very complicated relationship, as he knows. But that has helped me in many ways, in many instances. Yeah. Because he's real good about reminding us what we're really capable of. Mm-hmm. And how strong we really are.
Yeah, I think sometimes people they think in faith and Christianity or believing in God that everything's going to be all peaches and roses, and it's not. There's been many a times I've yelled at God. Why? Probably a lot in the last, I don't know, 3-4 years. But that definitely has helped push me through. What does it look like for Geena today?
Geena is trying to figure out what she wants to be when she grows up. I really am trying to be very disciplined in working on my writing. I know how important it is. Like when I saw on your Instagram story that you were looking for people to participate in this podcast, immediately I got a knot in my stomach, and immediately I said, I need to do that. It's important. Yeah. It's scary as all get out, but I need to. It's time. I know it's time to start sharing my experiences. And I want to be able to, when my time comes that I do leave this earth, I want to know that I did something of value to someone.
Yeah. Well, I thank you so much for reaching out and for responding. I am truly grateful, and I'm humbled, and that you would share your story here first. Continue to keep going. I know you've got this writing stuff going on, and man, you can do it. This is the best time to live at all, because if you want to learn something and if you want to do something, you can.
Right.
We've got Google and YouTube. Like, that's really all you need. How do I become a writer? I just met a gal this summer who just published her first children's book. And it's just that, that makes me super happy. I didn't even know her, but it's like, you did it. You did it. You didn't need this big publisher. You did it. So I know that you can do it. I know that you can do the memoir. You can do the children's book. You can print as many as you want. We don't need to go through all of these big companies. So I just, congratulations on that, and keep moving forward. And when you finish writing these books, and as long as I'm still doing this podcast, I want to have you back, and I want to talk to you about that stuff. We'll give away some stuff or whatever,
Absolutely.
Before then, I want you to send me your autograph just in case if you become too big. At least I can say I've got the autograph, and then I have the interview.
You've got your yearbooks, right?
Oh, that's right. I do. I don't know if I want to open those. High school wasn't always the best.
Right.
I don't know. I don't like some of those photos. So let's end off with a couple of things. Let's end off with this. What would you tell your 8-year-old self, your 9-year-old self, your 11-year-old self, now that you have been through this life, and if you could go back in time and look at this young child, what would you tell her?
My 8-year-old self, I would tell her that this was the best decision your family could have made for themselves. They both, were able to create more meaningful relationships for themselves. My 9, 10, 11-year-old self, I would just remind her that it's not your fault. Same with my 20-year-old self. The trauma that I went through in those two experiences of abuse and assault, there's nothing I did to cause that to happen. It was all part of the journey I was supposed to go on for whatever reasoning to get me here today, to be the better person I am because of it.
Yeah, I think people need to be reminded, like when they're going through trauma, like this, like it's not your fault.
Yeah.
You don't need to overeat, right? I mean, you were doing it so that you could physically look different, but none of that was your fault. For the person that is on the edge, that is struggling to wake up in the morning, what would you say to that person?
You are definitely not alone in how you feel. Think of the one person that you feel most confident going to that will hear you out on your terms, that will help you get the help that you want, that you need. I think deep down, we all really want the help. We just have to have the courage to ask for it.
That was beautifully put. Yeah. A lot of times we are super scared. So now to the audience, if somebody's coming to you and they are struggling, love them. Just listen, answer the phone, love on them, be respectful of their journey and what they are telling you, because, it's their story. I'm always trying to be respectful of that and letting them tell their story. I will ask some questions, as I get to talk with people, but in the end, it's their struggle, it's their hurt, it's their pain. So, and if needed, if you need to go any further and call like the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, Again, that's 1-800-273-8255. The whole reason why we're doing this story is because of suicide prevention. And the more we can get out there, the more lives that we could save.
Yeah.
One more thing before I let you go.
Yes.
Your birth name is not Geena.
That is accurate.
Why did you decide to change that?
I decided to change that because for me, some of the absolute hardest things I've ever gone through in my life happened with that name. And I wanted to make sure that that person who was so sad or broken, that she was dead and buried. I didn't want her to hold me back. So I might not have legally changed it, but most people do not know me by that name.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's gone.
Nice.
Peace out.
Yeah. Yeah, that old name is gone. This is this is Geena.
Yes.
Well, again, thank you so much for doing this and for being a light for people and for sharing the journey. I know it was hard,
It was.
And I hope that you can continue to share this journey on many more podcasts or TV series or whatever it is. Because that's the biggest thing that we need to be reminded is that we're not alone. There are other people going through it, and we need to be encouraged to just reach out for that help before it's too late. And thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to begin sharing my story. It means a lot.
All righty. Well, I will talk to you soon. And
yes.
I hope that you have a great night.
You too. Thanks, Tony. Bye.
Bye.